Hey everybody, I'm John. I'm the newest studio founder at F Inc. We don't have a name for our project yet, so it has a code name. It's called Butter Prawns, because that's what I had for dinner that night when we had to decide. We needed to pick something that was so bad we'd be forced to change it later. But now we love the name, and yeah, we'll see. So I'm here to talk about why it's never been a better time to build an XR. And as somebody building in it, I'm walking my beliefs, but I think I'm going to try to convince you guys why you should all build in VR too. A little bit about me. I used to be a scientist, so I was using machine learning to discover new materials and energy. I got into VR because it was just kind of cool, like being able to just step into another world and wear this device that transports you into another experience. That was interesting to me. When I saw the Oculus Go come out, which was kind of like the first standalone headset, I got intrigued, but the fact that you couldn't like move this way, you could only like look around, I was like, oh, wait, it'll get better. Then about a year passes, the Oculus Quest happens, and then that's when I really got into it. So I'm new-ish to the field of XR in general, but I have dove head in. I've been making stuff, like personal projects, and then that culminated in kind of this. Okay, so let me just give an overview of like what I kind of conceptualize as XR, and it's sort of a definition, but everybody has their own idea. But this is where I'm coming from, so I can describe why I think it's a great time. So XR is actually just a combination of a bunch of different technologies that have been developing over the last, 30 years. So you have head-mounted displays. These are enabled by the panels that come from smartphones for the most part. Those are enclosed around like your head with some sort of like facial interface, head interface. There's different form factors. They could be glasses. They could be like goggles. They could be kind of more substantial thing like the Quest Pro here. There's a couple form factors as well in terms of like, does it have compute on board or is the compute somewhere else? And so this headset, all the compute's on it, but you might have something that's smaller and lighter and it's just the display and it connects to a computer with a cable or maybe wirelessly. So that's the head-mounted display, that object there. You have some like audio component I think is really important for XR. So spatial audio, it can be spatial or non-spatial. Spatial audio will play different sounds to each of your ears so you hear it coming from a different place. And it may even change the waveforms of the sound so that it really does like have this spatial component. They can actually measure how your ears, like the shapes of your ears, and then map it onto different spots. And they're subtly changing the sound. And you'll really believe that there's a trumpet playing 3 feet in front of you with some of these like newer technologies. It's really incredible. There's going to be a rendering engine. There's some sort of software that's running on the compute, wherever that is determining, like based on when you move your head and where you are in the space, what should be shown to each of your eyes. And then that needs to be corrected for the distortion of the lenses, and it needs to be displayed to your eyes. And that has to happen really, really quickly at more than 70 frames a second. Otherwise, people get nauseous, and it messes with their balance. And then for that, you have to then connect that up to a system of software that decides what should be shown. So these are things like game engines, games, the tools for creating those things. And then when you put someone in a game, they could just look around and see things. Like that's cool. But really what we want to create is experiences that let them interact with the XR device. So there needs to be some sort of input system. What that means is maybe it's something they hold. Like this little thing I'm holding, I can interact with my computer by clicking these buttons. Maybe it has a system on board that has cameras that can see your hands and tracks your hands and creates virtual hands that lets you interact with objects. Maybe it's something else. Like I also have another project that I've been working on for a little bit where it uses your feet. So your feet are in VR. So that's kind of where we're coming from. So that's what XR is to me. All right, let's go through like kind of history of where XR came from and why I think this is now like a really good time. So back in 2012, this is kind of like the beginning of modern VR and XR. So the Oculus Kickstarter, Oculus was a company that was founded by this 19-year-old kid named Palmer Luckey. He was just really into 3D displays and 3D TV and all these technologies, and VR was one of those kind of things that should have, it's like this technology from the future that somehow you can get a glimpse of by trying like the stuff back then. So he started cobbling together headsets out of essentially mobile phone parts and whatever he could get his hands on. And he was living in a trailer in front of his parents' house near LA. And he started building what were actually the best VR headsets that had ever been made. This 19-year-old kid. He's an amazing person in that regard. And he was interacting with people on this forum. And one of the people that was in the forum was a guy named John Carmack. So John Carmack was the creator of Doom, legendary programmer. He was interested in VR too, and then he asked this guy Palmer, hey, I think your display looks cool, can you send me one and I'll mess around with it? And then this crazy turn of events comes through where people start trying John Carmack's VR demo at GDC. Palmer gets connected with a few folks who had previously had kind of a small success in startups. One of them was Brendan Iribe. They get together, say, let's form a company around this, let's do a Kickstarter, let's create dev kits, and it basically balloons into this amazing journey for all of them that created Oculus. And then that kickstarted modern VR. People were like, wow, this is like something I can buy. I can just get this Kickstarter and like experience and be inside the video game. And they see these videos of John Carmack showing off this VR headset at GDC, and the reporters there are blown away. They're like, it's amazing. You should watch some of that footage. It's pretty fun. So they start building, and they build for about 2 years, and then Mark Zuckerberg comes to Oculus and says, we want to buy you. And they get bought for about $3 billion, which is an amazing, going from being in a trailer building cobbled together headsets to selling your company for $3 billion within a few years. That's an amazing outcome for them. But it also enabled a lot of investment to come back into VR, because they were a small company. They had some investors, but it wasn't the scale that Facebook could offer. So Facebook started dumping money into these technologies. That got the interest of the rest of the gaming industry. They had to like have a response to it. And so shortly after, Valve and HTC got together and they created essentially what is like the modern Steam VR, PC VR ecosystem. And they launched that in 2015. So that's when the HTC Vive came out. That is really the moment like between the Oculus SDK, or DK1, and the HTC Vive. That's when VR developers started to jump into the system and try to like make software for this, sell it to people. And that's the birth of like modern VR deving. And then I think that there's like something that is like also emerging, which is this idea of AR, which is like you have screens that may be transparent. They can display virtual objects over the world around you. And Magic Leap, I think, is kind of the most notable of these companies. They raised $2 billion in VC funding before even shipping a product. They would have these magical demos, fly people out to Florida. Those people would come back saying, I signed an NDA, I can't talk about anything about what I said, but it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And that built this crazy level of hype. And we started seeing, like, in this 2015, 2016 era, crazy VR hype. And I think, how many people here are VR developers or have made things for VR? A couple? Yeah. So I don't know if you were doing it at that time, but I have a lot of friends who come from that era. It was very exciting, but it quickly ended up in this kind of like VR winter, like the first VR winter. And that was a tough moment. So Magic Leap kind of represents that in that they like raised all this money, they were making all these expectations, and then they like imploded basically and didn't ship a product. They still exist, and they actually have since shipped, and I'll get to that in a second. But like that was like the first winter. So that was a bad time to be a VR developer, or right before that would have been a bad time. So in 2018, the Magic Leap actually releases. It's sort of like it's super expensive. The field of view is tiny. There's a lot of development there, but AR is like starting to become like known as a thing. In 2019, this is when I started getting involved in VR. Like I had a PlayStation VR 1. I like played it a little bit, but when the Oculus Quest came out, that's when I started getting interested, because like all the compute was on it. Didn't require any wires. The setup was pretty easy. It was like kind of a transformational experience for me. And the Valve Index came out at the same time. It was this like very high field of view, beautiful headset, super comfortable. It worked with the outside-in tracking, so it had like very high accuracy tracking. Worked with the gaming PCs, so the visual fidelity was amazing if you had a good graphics card. This is about the time when graphics cards got super expensive too, and you couldn't get one. So the Quest 2, which came out like shortly after the Quest 1, it ended up dominating sales because nobody could get graphics card. They wanted to do VR. Everyone was locked in for the pandemic. And then basically they sold 20 million headsets, and it launched kind of like the modern VR ecosystem. So that is why modern VR is like roughly mostly standalone in terms of sales, like maybe 70%. But that's kind of what happened there. And then in 2022, like last year, they had to change their name because Epic Games sued them. They were called Nreal. Epic was like, that sounds too much like Unreal, so we're going to sue you. And so they had to change it to Xreal this year. But the Xreal Air came out, and that's a pair of AR glasses that looks like a pair of sunglasses, but it has displays in it. It uses displays that reflect light onto your eyes. And that headset is sort of like what I imagine that the next level of VR is going to look like. It's going to look like normal glasses. It's going to be very lightweight. This one, you have to connect to a phone or some other computer to display the image, but it looks really good. And then, of course, this year, Apple announced that they were getting into the game. I left a lot off of this roadmap, but this is what I kind of wanted to highlight this progression because I think that this is going to dominate the next maybe 5 years of the VR ecosystem or XR ecosystem. And we'll talk about Apple in a little bit. OK, so why now? I think now is the best time that there's ever been to build an XR. And I think that the first place we start is the hardware. There is so much hardware available with so much capability. So the Quest 2, it's $300. It's completely self-contained. Somebody can go buy one at Best Buy, go home, and start playing it that day. There's no setup involved. You don't have to drill into your wall and put base stations up. It's a really, really amazing moment in time when you can buy a device that can transport you into other worlds for, it's very affordable for people. And then there's all this other experimentations into going in different directions. So the Valve Index, it's all about comfort. So it's an older headset, but it's still, people still buy them because it's really comfortable. You can wear it for 6 hours at a time. It has a wide field of view so that you can see what's around you. And it has kind of like an open ecosystem. That black kind of panel on there actually pops up and it has a USB port in there that passes to your computer. So you can hack in. People put little displays in there. You can put other hardware. You can put other tracking, hand tracking devices. All of it works. The Quest Pro, which came out last year, that's the device here. This is kind of like the next evolution of the Quest 2. And I'm going to talk about some of its features and why we're developing for it and why it's really interesting. But this is the standalone direction. So it's sort of forking off. There's a standalone direction, and there's this uber comfortable PC VR direction. And then the big screen beyond, I think, is the next evolution of that, where it's this tiny headset. It's super light. The facial interface is 3D printed based on a scan of your face. And so it is only your headset. The IPD on it is set exactly for your eyes, the distance between the two lenses. So it's the most comfortable headset that is wearable for 8 hours at a time, and it is only $1,000, but you still need a PC to work with it. So it's about high fidelity, high engagement, long play session VR. And then in terms of the AR side, we have the Magic Leap 2, which just came out this year or last year. It wasn't really buyable last year, but now it is. So that's a headset where it's pretty comfortable. It looks really cool in my opinion, but it's not like a pair of glasses yet. It has a compute puck that comes off of it and travels up to the headset, and one controller. And it's sort of this interesting medium place between a standalone VR and an AR device, because it can actually shut the opacity on the lenses and dim them so that you can have a full VR experience or AR. It's like this AR VR mode kind of thing. But it has transparent lenses, so you can get full fidelity into the real world. And on the opposite end of that, you have the Quest Pro, which is passing through there's cameras on the outside, and it passes through the vision from those to your eyes. And then that is you can kind of turn on AR, but it's not high fidelity AR. So now these things they diverge, and now they're coming back together. And then there's some really nice, just kind of workhorse PC VR headsets like the HTC Vive, which are used. Those are the favorites of the location-based entertainment companies. And then the Xreal Air, they're going now wireless, so you'll be able to stream from your iPhone wirelessly and wear something that looks mostly like a normal pair of glasses, and then do your laundry or be on a plane or something. And so this is I think this device here is giving people a glimpse into what the form factor of AR and VR devices is going to be. And it's very interesting. They're selling like crazy. They're doing really well. And what all of this hardware means is that you have a lot of options when you make software for it. This is frustrating. OK. OK, so all this hardware, they give us new capabilities. So there's software being developed for the hardware. And these are things like hand tracking. So what you're seeing here is the new Unity like XR interaction toolkit hand tracking module. And you can do things like, I mean, I don't know, for people that haven't built in VR before, until very recently, you had almost no tools. Like, it would tell you, you could track where the controllers are and what buttons are being pressed, but that's it. It doesn't, there was nothing telling the game engine how to interact with an object. Like, when you pull a trigger, should that like make the object move with your hand now? Is that a grab? Or like all of that you had to code yourself, basically, or you'd have to get like third-party asset libraries in the asset stores, and like support was kind of spotty. There was no kind of good ways of doing things. Everyone was just, it was a free-for-all, roll-your-own kind of world. And now there are these really high-quality interaction toolkits, SDKs, for using the hardware that that you have access to. And it enables you to, instead of thinking about how am I going to code the script that parents the objects onto the hands when you're grabbing them, you can just grab objects. You just import it, and like you think about design of the experience at a higher level instead of this low-level stuff. So it's going to enable more people to make experiences than we were able to before. Also, there's a level of immersion in social interactions that is brought by body tracking. So this is like really interesting in apps like VR Chat, where people will, they spend thousands and thousands of dollars on buying sensors that they can strap to their body on all different points so that they can have their avatar move and react like them in the real world. And so these things are getting smaller and smaller. This is Sony's new Mocopi system. They're about the size of maybe like an Apple AirTag, and you can, maybe even smaller actually, and you can put them on your feet, your knees, hips, wherever you want, and it enables you to have like extremely high fidelity body tracking that you can then map onto virtual characters or use in Steam VR and things like that. So this is enabling a whole different, like now you could, before you couldn't make a soccer game, right? You didn't have people's feet. There was no feet in VR. There's been memes about like legs don't exist in the metaverse, but now they can, right? And so you can imagine that this enables like a whole different type of software where you're interacting with your body instead of just like fingers or key taps. We have eye tracking and gaze tracking now that's like super heavily used in like social apps, of course, but it gives you another like tool that you can hook into, right? If Apple uses it really extensively in the Vision Pro, they use it to, instead of having a controller or having your hands point at stuff like Minority Report, you just look at something, and if you look at a text box and start speaking, it starts typing into it. That's like a magical experience for people, but it's only enabled because of the hardware that they're putting into these headsets. So the Quest Pro here, these have like little cameras around the eye, and they track where your eyes are looking, and they do that through machine learning algorithms. But all of this has been like the slow development of the ML, the hardware, the user base, because you have to justify how many people are going to buy a product. So we like all of this has basically accreted together, and now we get to benefit from this like hard work that has been done by this big community of developers, engineers, companies over the last 10 years, and it's just like there for us for free. It's incredible. And then also face tracking. Like this is something that I think hasn't been developed yet as much in terms of like there's not that many apps that use it. It's not really something that is known. Like people when you ask them about VR, they're not really thinking about, oh, my face is tracked in it, right? But that's becoming a sort of standard feature now, or I expect it will become a standard feature after like maybe the next generation of headsets. Apple's doing it. Meta already has a version of it. And you can imagine that like now your computer can understand what emotion you have, right? You can like converse with somebody else in a real fashion in a virtual world, and like the character that you're wearing is gonna emote like you. It's gonna like feel like a real interaction with somebody. That has, I think, incredible consequences for how people are gonna start interacting with each other in virtual worlds. And so we have in this moment, like we're at the very beginning of this. We have the opportunity to completely change how people interact with each other. Like you can completely eliminate distance between people. If you want to speak with a relative who is 1,000 miles away, you're going to be able to do that. And there are new machine learning techniques coming out to essentially synthesize realistic faces driven by these facial tracking animations so that you can like have a call in VR, and the face that that person is seeing is just your face, and it's moving how you're moving your real face in real life. So it's way better than Zoom. Like that spatial element, the spatial audio. Like there's a big difference between having a Zoom call with somebody and meeting with them in person, right? But when you have this technology, you can just have that meeting. And then imagine you can also just have a meeting with somebody that doesn't exist, right? We have all of these generative AI technologies that are allowing you to generate languages and voice, like language and voice and sequences of actions and things like that. We'll be able to have conversations with computers. And that, again, also has like a weird implication for humanity. Replica has millions of users, and they have virtual friends that they talk to daily. It's a very weird world that we're headed into. OK, so why is it also, I think another reason why it's the best time there's ever been to learn XR is because there are people who have been doing it for a while now. They've learned what works, what doesn't, and they're willing to share it. So these are my 3 favorite resources for people that are new to XR, because I thought there might be a lot of people who haven't done this quite yet. So this one is Justin Barnett. This cute corgi with the VR headset is Valem Tutorials, and this is Dilmer Valesios. So these 3 make regular content about how to make things in VR, XR. Dilmer is especially good at, so Justin is I think the best Quest-specific video maker. He makes a lot of content for Quest. Valem also does a lot of Quest stuff. Dilmer does not just Quest, but also phone AR and Snapchat, glasses AR, and he tries out all the different toolkits and kind of gives you a sense of how to use it, gives you instructions. They have Discord communities that you can join and ask questions to. So these are 3 great resources, but that's just the starting point. There's so many great resources you could go to, but just get involved and start talking to people here, and you'll end up finding them. The elephant in the room, the $3 trillion company. So Apple just announced that they're making a VR headset, or they call it a spatial computer. It is sort of like if you took every feature that existed in every headset and then added a bunch of features that nobody had tried yet, that is what this is. It has full pass-through that is supposed to be lifelike in terms of the resolution. The panels in it are 4K by 4K micro OLED displays, so the resolution is higher than any headset that has really been shipped to consumers for the price point that they're giving it at. Headsets that had similar resolutions would cost you $10K, and you'd have to pay like a $2,000 a year subscription to it in order to use it. It's apparently very comfortable. It has amazing software. It has amazing SDKs. And if you actually watched I'm sure everybody here probably watched the keynote. I think one thing that they said, but I think wasn't really quite appreciated, is that the SDKs that they're building this on, Vision OS, it's mostly like iPad OS. And so the millions and millions of iOS developers are now XR developers. And so if you've built iOS apps, or I mean the amount of content out there for helping people build iOS apps, there are incredible studios that you could hire to build. So if you're not a developer yourself, you can hire them to build iOS apps. All of that infrastructure, all of that code, all of that knowledge, it becomes directly accessible in XR and applicable to this new industry. And beyond just that technical capabilities, the public is now aware of VR and XR at a whole different level. I was using this headset. I was traveling, and I was working in a WeWork, and I was working on our app that I'll show you in a second. And every 10 minutes, somebody would come up and basically I would take the headset off to just type something, and then they would have been waiting kind of creepily. And they say, hey, is that the Apple headset? And I had to be like, no, it's not the Apple headset, but it's this other one. But they're so curious. I've never seen this level of curiosity about VR. Normally, if you wear a VR headset in a WeWork, people just think you're a weirdo and avoid you. But now they're engaging. And so I think this is almost one of the key reasons why this is a great time to be an XR developer, is because the amount of interest that Apple is going to create when they actually launch and people can try these things in Apple stores, there's going to be so much new people coming to the field, new consumers wanting to get into VR. The $3,500 price point is very high, and so if you can ship an experience on a cheaper headset, that's going to be attractive to people. More investment, investors are going to want to get into this, because anytime Apple does something, money just kind of follows it. Because they know that Apple is not going to ship a product that is not going to meaningfully adjust their earnings, right? And if you're earning hundreds of billions of dollars a year, that's a really meaningful industry that's being created. So I think this is a key feature, but it's not, you don't have to build for Apple. It's just there's a rising tide lifts all boats effect that's going to happen. So I didn't want to make this a sales pitch about what we're building, but I wanted to show you. So we tweeted something out this morning. We are building essentially like spatial productivity software for any headset. So it'll run on the Apple headset. It runs on Quest right now. And we can put it on pretty much any platform. But it turns these standalone VR devices that you have into computers. And they're already computers, but like they didn't feel like computers to us. They felt like something else. But it was inspired. I was finishing up my PhD, and I was writing my dissertation. It's this like 150-page document that contains all of the work I did during my school. And I was hitting a wall with it. I could not write another letter. It was really, writer's block had hit me. And I thought, okay, why don't I freshen it up and change the environment I'm working in? Maybe I can work in VR and like load like a Hawaiian beach or something and work from there instead of my little bedroom office thing. And I put the headset on. I tried to work in VR. There were so many just frustrations there in like all the different software that there is to do this. Either you had to stream a PC in, but then that would be laggy and it might lose connection. Or if you would try to do it on the headset, it wasn't built to be like a productivity suite. You couldn't put windows where you wanted them. You couldn't access certain websites. You couldn't, it was just, there's nothing that I could use to do just work in VR. And so that's what we're building. We just want to make it so that you can sit down, pull out your device, be in either the space you're in, like this. This is showing like full augmented reality. Or you can have it melt away and then be in your personal, exact, perfect work environment that's set up how you left it. You can swap between them, so you can have one for writing emails and one for coding. And then this is basically everyone's dream personal productivity setup. Like you might buy monitors and VESA mounts and arms, but it's just completely fluid and free, and you can do anything in it. So what you're seeing here, we're doing some VS Code on the right, and on the left we have Discord open. So you can actually benefit from all of the advances in web tech that's happened, progressive web apps, kind of hybrid computing where the UI is local, but the actual hard like compute is happening in the cloud. And yeah, we think that we were kind of validated when Apple showed very similar things. So we think that like this is the right direction. We thought it was the right direction, but Apple also seems to think it's the right direction. And so I would encourage you all to come try our demo. I'll have it running. We can socialize a bit, and you can try it out. Give us your feedback. We have a Discord that you can join. I'll give you links to all that too. And we'd love to hear what you think you want to build. That's like one thing that we're very interested in. So with that, I will pass it off to whoever's, I guess, Omar. Yeah, and yeah, we can take some questions.